In this video, we will be working through the process for creating a child size shop stool. I was provided a basic set of drawings for this child size shop stool. I have identified the various pieces that I will be using. There will be 4 legs that are created using 1-inch square tubing. We have 4 footrest pieces that will also be using 1-inch square tubing. There is some 1-inch by 1/8 inch flat bar that will tie everything together at the top, and that will be topped with a plastic seat top. I'm going to begin by cutting all 4 of my legs. I can see that the legs need to be angled at 7 degrees, but if you rotate the shop stool 90 degrees, they still need to be at 7 degrees. So I need to make sure that I have both ends cut at 7 degrees so they will angle inwards. Additionally, the length of each of these legs is 13 5/8 inches. To create this 7-degree angle cut on the legs, I'm going to be using the cold saw. And rather than making one cut at 7 degrees and then rotating my material and making a second cut at 7 degrees, I'm going to set this up diagonally or at a 45-degree angle and make one cut. Now, the problem with this particular saw is that the head itself does not tilt. Ideally, if I had my material set up at a 45-degree angle in the vise and I tilted the head 7 degrees, I could create this compound cut. This saw head will, however, allow me to create miter cuts by pivoting left and right. I can use this function in conjunction with my vise setting my material up at 45 degrees to create this compound cut. After doing a bunch of math and simulating this in the computer, I have determined that the angle I need my cold saw set at is 80.15 degrees. In addition, I will have my material clamped at a 45-degree angle in the vise. The length of each of these legs is 13 5/8. We can slide our material down and line it up with our 13 5/8 inch mark. If we set this leg flat on the table, we can see that we are angled up at 7 degrees. If we rotate this, we're at 7 degrees in our other direction as well. After that, we can measure, mark, and cut our remaining 3 legs. The next piece that we will make is the footrest piece. This measures 10 9/16 from the long point to the long point, and this needs to be in the shape of a trapezoid. Now, it's not necessary for me to create a compound cut, so I'm going to load my material in the vise so that it is square. Additionally, I have set my cold saw miter angle to 83 degrees, which is 7 degrees from a perfect 90-degree angle cut. Given the 7-degree cut angle of my saw, if I just slide this material down and create my new cut, that cut angle remains the same. Thus, I will be cutting a parallelogram. I need to cut a trapezoid. Rather than changing the degree angle of the saw head, I'm going to flip my material 180 degrees, and that will now allow me to cut that reverse angle from my first one. From my longest point to my longest point, my measurement is 10 and 9/16 inches. I can then line up my mark in the vise and make my cut. For my next piece, I'm again going to rotate the material 180 degrees, measure, mark, and cut. The last piece that we need to make is the flat bar tie-in pieces at the top. The legs will be welded to this flat bar, as well as our plastic top will be bolted to the flat bar. The size of our seat is 12 inches square. We have a 1-inch overhang, so the length of our flat bar needs to be 10 inches. Using some 1-inch by 1/8 inch flat bar, I'm going to mark out 10 inches, and we will be cutting this on the iron worker. Now, per our specifications, we want the ends of each of these pieces to be cut at a 45-degree angle. This means that we want to make a trapezoid with each of these pieces. Using a combination square, I'm using the 45 angle side of our combination square. I can mark each end at a 45-degree angle. I can then go back to the iron worker and clamp each of my pieces in place. And make each of my 45-degree angle cuts. If you did a good job measuring, you should have a pretty tight fit up. Now I want my seat top to be bolted down to this flat bar. So I'm going to be running some bolts through the top of the seat, through the flat bar. It's easier for me to measure, mark, and drill those holes at this point before I've assembled it than after I've assembled it. Each of my pieces are 10 inches long from long point to long point. So I'm going to create a mark at the halfway point, 5 inches. Using my combination square, I'm going to extend that line, and then I need to locate the halfway point on my 1-inch flat bar. Using a punch and a ball peen hammer on the anvil portion of the vise, I'm going to put a small divot in my metal. This is going to help prevent the drill bit from walking on me when I'm on the drill press. The bolts that will be going through these holes are 1/4 inch in diameter. I will be using a size I drill bit which is just a little bit bigger than 1/4 inch. Before tacking any of these pieces together, I'm going to clean up each of the edges on the belt sander. This will remove any burrs of metal that may interfere with the fit-up process. After all our pieces have been cleaned up, we are ready to tack weld our project together. To aid in this process, I have created a jig to help orient all of the pieces to make sure that everything is lined up accurately and precisely. It is important to make sure that the bottom of the foot is angled correctly. I have this angled so that it is slanting out as it progresses towards the template. If I ensure that both of the feet are slanting outward as they progress towards the template, what I am looking at right now will become the inside of the stool. The side that is facing the template will be the outside. So this will be tipped up at us. For the assembly of the first side, I'm going to add a small tack weld on the bottom portion of each of my pieces. There will be 4 tack welds total, and this will ensure that when I add my other sides, the tack welds do not interfere with the joining metal pieces. After our first side is tacked, we're going to create a setup identical to the first and tack that in place also. Once both sides are completely tacked, we want to sit each of the sides upright in the jig, install our cross member pieces, and tack them in place. To help maintain correct spacing, since these legs are loose, I'm going to install a couple pieces of scrap metal on my cross member piece that is across from where I am tack welding. And these are just clamped in place just to make sure things aren't going to move around on me. And then we can flip our jig around to the other side. And tack weld that together. After that, we can remove it from the jig. At this point, I'm going to go through and weld every connecting joint. However, on the top of the seat, where our flat bar comes together, I'm not going to put any welds on top because we need our seat to sit flat on that metal. And if we have a weld bead there, it's not going to sit flat. I will, however, weld the underneath side of that flat bar. of the welds are made, you can clean up any welds and any metal that you need to before painting. Once the paint has dried, we can bolt on our seat cover. And lastly, we can add the plastic caps to finish off the base so it will protect the carpet.